for me, I think the acceptance of the divorce, the separation, I think that was done earlier. And I think even the moment, I'm a usually a pretty patient guy, and I think the moment that I sat down with my wife at the time and we decided to separate, I knew for me it was done. There was no turning back. So it's never something that I kind of uh, that kind of carried on myself and I thought about. The agreement, like I said, once this was done, it was a good thing, and that was done as well. But I think that I think that basically that was the turning point. Really was not really to be on those parts, but really kind of put that behind you and start to like the acceptance, which was done before, but kind of accept that things won't change. So, and that it will be that way. More than accepting the divorce or accepting what was happening, but just accepting that basically this is the point. Things were done. Now let's go. Let's move on. And yeah, it's not an easy, obviously an easy thing to do, and it might take a lot of time, and it took the time it took for me. But yeah, that was definitely the turning point.
So for you, did you experience, because as a man, we bottle things up, right? We're built differently. Like if you give us a problem, we try to fix it. We don't talk about it. We don't, like, you and I are a rare breed to be able to talk about our divorce because I mean, I'm a Latino man. For me, shame around this conversation, it's really what caused me to break out and say, you know what, I'm going to change the narrative of this story because I'm not going to be ashamed of a divorce. I still believe, like, the time that I was with her, best years of my life. I loved it. So I'm not gonna deny that. What did it feel like for you going through those emotions, those situations, you know?
Well, I wasn't ashamed of the divorce when this happened, but I think, like you said, maybe we're a bit different. I guess men often keep it inside, and I did too. And I think it's the way to bring it up to as well. And women often talk usually more about their emotions, and they'll talk about all this. Men, even if I wanted to talk about it to people, I felt like that. I didn't know how to talk to my friends about it at the beginning. How do you bring it up? How do you start a conversation? And also, some friends, I didn't know how they would react as well. So there was a bit that, I guess. That's the reason why I kept it a bit at the beginning. But at some point, I just let it out and see how that was going. So I told him about it. But again, it's also maybe not everything, and the emotional part often I left out too. So I told about my divorce, but really I don't think they knew exactly how I felt emotionally and where I stood and everything else. I told them after like when I had a discussion with them and through my podcast, but also through talking to friends. But at the time, I remember that it was more kind of a maybe as we do usually, men, I guess. So we, like you said, we solve problems, right? So basically, it was okay. There's a problem, didn't work out. The solution was we got divorced, and that's it. But I didn't really talk to anyone about emotion or I felt and things like that. And I think that's one thing that maybe was missing, and I wish I would have. But in my mind, I didn't know really which friend I could talk to about that and their reaction. And also, I mean, maybe you've probably been faced to that too. It's the same, the opposite, right? Some friends come to you and talk about someone that just passed or a divorce. You never know what to say, and it's always a bit a bit weird sometimes, and you never have the right words. So I felt that way as well at the times. Like I'll tell someone and they'll look at me and say, and it happened too sometimes, like, not too sure what to say, right? So congratulations, or I'm sad for you, or so I got both, but yeah, you never know.
I had one guy in my gym. He told me, when I told him about my divorce, he was like, should I say, is it congratulations or I'm sorry? And I was like, it's a congratulations. It's a congratulations.
Exactly.
So you did something that's rare and honorable. You turned your divorce into an opportunity. Can you talk about that? How did you find that? Like, how did you find the podcast? How did you find yourself? How did you turn it around and make it an opportunity?
Well, there's different, I guess, part of it. So when you get when you get divorced or separate, I mean, it's kind of a second chance. I saw it as a second chance on my side for my life to do things I wanted to do, I always wanted to do, and take that opportunity to do it and do it the way you wanted to do it. And so for me, that was a big thing. Like I told you on the business side, I got my own business, so I always wanted to do. So that was a time for that. I was always into podcasting. Like I love podcasting and listening to podcasts. And I was thinking about starting a podcast many years ago. And going through the divorce made me realize that because I'm sure you know too. Once you go through that, you start kind of googling a bunch of stuff, and you realize there's a lot of information out there, but not a lot about focus maybe on men and dads, and also not a lot focus more on the emotional part or how you feel on that point. It's more kind of a lot of things about more the technical part of divorce, lawyers, selling house, and things like that. But really, how you feel, how you're supposed to feel, and how can you manage those feelings, and what's depression a bit, and things like that. So for me, when I went through that, it was an opportunity. I said, you know what, I didn't find what I was looking for when I was looking for it. So I said that's a great, and I love podcasting. So I was like, that's a great way to kind of marry both of them. And I was talking to a few friends about them, and they told me that's a great idea. You should try. And so yeah, so that gave me kind of the ideas to start this podcast and my podcast, and basically take it from there. And since then, it was amazing because I can tell my story a little bit and try to, a bit like you do, right? You try to fill up the gaps, I guess, that are there, and some of the questions you think that, at least from my side, things I was trying to look at and that wasn't available. So that gave me a great opportunity on that one. Uh, Also, the divorce. If I was talking about my kids, it actually, funny enough, brought me so much closer to my kids, much more than I was before, especially my daughter. And father-daughter relationships can also be a bit different, and the teenage years, and also obviously, kind of, it depends. There's a lot of topics that are a bit harder to discuss. So, but it brought me so much closer to her and my son, and to talk pretty much about everything. And I think that's another thing that really helped me is they were there as well. And one thing I try not to do is to use them as therapists and things. I think that's I don't want to put any burden on them. But what I love is they opened up, and we got closer and doing things together, and having fun together, and that's something that I'm so grateful for, and that's one of probably the biggest achievements as well on that front. So yeah, those so yeah, so that really opened doors everywhere, pretty much at all levels. So besides the uh, I guess, and you know what, after a while, I think I was talking about guilt before, and that's when I think I realized the guilt kind of slowly went away, and I started realizing that I think I made the right decision, and I'm much happier. The kids are much happier, and life is good. It gets better and better. So that's how I took it at the end. I'm like, yeah, so the guilt kind of goes away, and you realize that you've done the right thing. So that's how I felt.
And yeah, you have an episode with your daughter on your podcast that's phenomenal. So if you're listening or if you're watching us, I'll share all of Stephane's information, but definitely listen to that one because it's a beautiful podcast.
Thank you. And I'll be honest, it's my favorite, and not because it's my daughter, but because, like I was saying, getting closer with your kids, uh, it got me a lot closer with her. But at the same time, when I did that episode too, I learned so many things that I didn't even know about her, and how she felt and everything else. And I think that's another thing too. People, parents, you assume a lot of things about the kids. So when I made that episode, I wanted also to kind of show people and have it from the mouth of a kid and kids in general.
Yeah.
So I was grateful for that. And like I said, that's probably the best thing to this day. I mean, my son's same thing, but my son is in the video game phases now, so I guess he's doing much more. He still picks most of the time more video games over his dad, but still, he's still 14, so that's okay. But yeah.
So knowing what you know now, how important is it to talk? Like, what would you What would you say about that? Like how important is it to share your story?
Oh, I think it's very important. I mean, for me, like I said, I was looking for something that wasn't there. It was a pretty difficult path, and it was important for me um, to share. I mean, to share my story. Everybody has a different story. I mean, you shared your story as well, and everybody has different stories on that. But for me, it was important to talk about it, and also that maybe make other men, dads, and even women. I mean, again, it can happen both sides as well. Just aware of maybe a bit more how we feel throughout the whole process. uh, like you're saying before, sometimes guys keep feelings inside, so it doesn't mean that you look at someone, that person looks happy, that person is actually happy. And but if you just look at people and if you just take that, that's what you take out of it. So I really want to share my story to say, you know what, maybe from the outside it looked like this, but that's how I felt, and um, that's how you can feel, and that's how I found ways to kind of get out of different situations and different things. And just to communicate to people and have a discussion too, and have people like had you. It was an amazing episode with you on my show. It was like, hearing about, let's say, your story and other people's story, and that at the end of the day, I think is everybody wants to be heard. And the more you hear about it, the more will be helpful to the next person or the next that's going through that, and might make it a bit easier too. So that really was the idea for me to, and why it's that important to communicate.
That's a wrap on another episode of Divorce the First 6 Months. Don't forget to hit subscribe for more insights. Take care.